Okay, and I put a resource in the chat that might be a good starting point for many of you that will regularly be updated. And then Kevin in the CTE Resource Center has put together some things that will be in folders that you'll receive when you get there, and that will point you to the same place.
Yes. So we ready, Jim?
Anytime you are, yes, and we are
Okay.
recording.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. For those of you who don't know me, I am Darla Miller, Executive Director for Virginia ACTE. All of you that are on here have signed up and plan on attending our conference that will be held later this week in Richmond at the downtown Hilton. I'm going to say a few things about the hotel. I may get into Jim, Dr. Eggenreiter's part of his presentation, but we are going to be there for our professional development and also on Friday morning to head to the General Assembly building to advocate for career and technical ed. We're not lobbying, folks. We're advocating because our legislators, a lot of them are brand new. They don't know what they don't know what they don't know. And so it is our job to, again, to educate them. I'll tell that in a minute. This is the first time we're trying this event. I do not have a survey at the end, but you can send comments and emails to me directly if you thought this was a good idea or not a good idea. So it is our 25th conference, but not 25 years of ACTE in Virginia. Dr. Long is a long historian. We celebrated the 20th year in 2019 when Jessica Jones was president. We are celebrating the 25th year of our conference as Virginia ACTE. Some of you seasoned veterans out there remember the Virginia Vocational Association. And so that's why I'm saying it's not 25 years of vocational ed or Virginia ACTE, but it is our 25th conference under this name. So we're trying not to get you confused with that. You will get shirts when you register. We have several bling items to give you. We have shirts. We have some wine cups that you might use later in the week at a hospitality or some other events. It'll start officially Thursday morning with breakfast downstairs. The buffet will be set up in the pre-function, River City pre-function area, and then you're welcome to take your plate into the main ballrooms, Miller Rhodes and Gerhardt. We do have set up, unless something changes, Amy Gadara, our Secretary of Ed, and Lisa Coons, Dr. Lisa Coons, our State Superintendent of Virginia Education, Department of Ed, will be our guest speakers that morning. And we have then two additional folks that will talk to you a little bit. Transportation folks are going to talk to you about some jobs that they have available. We have set up, and I've talked to the folks at the Capitol. We have about 30 of you set up for the 3 o'clock tour and about 30 of you who signed up for the 4 o'clock tour. You still have, if you didn't sign up when you registered and you still want to go, they were initially expecting 45. I confirmed 30. We will meet in the hotel lobby you can start assembling at about 2:30. We will leave at sorry, we're gonna get my time straight. 2:40, because we'll be walking down to the Capitol. If you are driving, parking down in that area is a little tight. The lady told me today we'll be going the entrance on East Bank Street, that entrance to the Capitol. And folks, you're going to have to go through metal detector. You're going to do that when you go to the General Assembly building. So don't bring along your switchblades, your box knives, your car keys, things like that, because it'll set off the detector. We want to get through as quickly as possible. I will then, after I drop the first group off, I'm going to walk back and grab the group at 4 o'clock. You're to assemble in the lobby area down there near where the bar and so forth are. We'll meet there, and at that time will be 3:40. Friday, and we will then be moving on down to the Capitol. And I hope you enjoy this tour. Parking, I'll just tell you before you check out, we did create a deal with the hotel. Parking's supposed to be for us, the valet, at $35. For those of you that come in, are not able to stay because proximity to Richmond, my understanding, there is a hotel lot across, it's a one-way street, so there is a hotel lot across from the entrance, the parking lot entrance to the Hilton. But I was also told that you could go around the block. You should find some on-street parking, and the Marriott lot across the street is supposed to have parking. So there are just some things. I apologize to those of you that did not get a room at conference rate. The hotel went under all new management over the summer. And so I was not working with the individuals we had in the past, and this new group was not willing to give in. We like the Hilton, but because of the cost, and we know your school division's reimbursements, we'll be looking at some other possible venues for the future. You will be able, before you leave the session Friday or at Friday's last session, we have the QR codes ready for you to do surveys. The program was printed by Kevin 2 weeks ago before Christmas. Any changes made are now virtually, and you can find them on the virginiaacte.org webpage. We do have an issue with that webpage. The certificate is expired. And so we know that the folks in DOE, your IT person and I talked Friday, he is giving you a workaround. If you know how to type in HTTP and don't put the S on it, you should be able. You can also use Microsoft Edge. That works well to get those log arounds. The school systems have really gotten tight, and they should, with internet and hackers and so forth. So I'm just saying, any changes now to the program, Kimberly will have those listed, and Kevin and them will update in the virtual program. The hospitality suite. Talk about this real quick. Folks, yes, there'll be alcohol there, and yes, it's free, but we'll have food as well. And it's just a place for you to come. It's going to be in my room one night. After the reception on Thursday, it'll be in George's room. We will tell you what those are. They'll be in the program, hopefully after I check in tomorrow and George checks in tomorrow. You can then refer to the program. You'll know where they are. It's just a great time to sit down and network with your colleagues and get to know them and their interest, and talk about what you do in your school system and what they are maybe doing, and you can exchange of ideas. Or if nothing else, you can tell fish stories or shopping adventures. So again, hospitality suite, especially new folks that have never been before, please come join us. It's a great opportunity. Now, any questions before I segue to some advocacy stuff and then turn it over to Jim?
Charlotte, there's a question in the chat. I want to know if they need clear bags to enter the Capitol tomorrow. I mean,
Well,
is it,
yeah.
I mean, Wednesday, on Wednesday?
Day. Okay, so that means you're gonna want to bring your purse. Yeah, I would probably suggest they didn't, and I didn't ask that. So if we get off here, maybe I need to call the Capitol building and ask about clear bags, and then I'll still have time to send that email out to you. That's a good question. I know they talked about said I called back about the metal detectors, but I didn't think about clear bags. And I know that clear bags are the standard issue now, especially if you go to any collegiate type event, they want that. So let me check on it. Anything else? Okay, real quick before I turn to Jim then. I said a little bit earlier, we are advocating, folks. We're not lobbying. You are going to go to the Capitol on Friday if your school division allows it. And if not, we have some breakout session repeats that we want you to attend, because I have planned more than sandwiches for the buffet, the final buffet. So I think it's meat and some herb chicken. So we do have some good food there at the end. We want you to stay till it's time to depart on Friday. And you're going to go down and you're going to talk to your legislator or their aides. And I was told the other day, and I think we've told you all before, if you haven't set up an appointment right now to speak to your legislator on Friday, you're going to get an aide. And that's not a bad thing, because the aides, I was at a conference just recently, and we know the ag folks sometimes seem to like have it all together. Well, they're a member of the Virginia Ag Council, and I have met their executive director. And he's got about 8 people that works under him, and they just hang in the General Assembly building all during the 60 days of session. And what Chris Williamson told me was this: you want photo ops, you definitely want your legislator. If you want to help policy and promote it and advocate about what you're doing statistically, the legislative aides are the folks that are going to be writing and composing those documents. And you ought to actually have several documents with you. Your legislator is important, and they're the ones that are going to sit in the committee meetings. But when it comes to crafting bills and your interest, it is going to be legislative aid. So if you don't get to see a legislator, and we've been sometimes criticized by that, don't worry about it. Okay. David Bailey Associates, who is our lobbyist, he and the Public Policy Committee will work on that and make sure our legislators know what we in Virginia ACTE need. Thursday afternoon, after the luncheon and wards luncheon, about 2:15, we'll have a ACT business meeting quickly, and then we'll spend about an hour to an hour and a half. David Bailey will be present. Dr. Long is going to be on the agenda. Adrian Graham is going to be on the agenda. Bo Bundrick, and maybe a few of our other policy committee folks. And we're going to talk to you about what's in the packet of information that you can take down to your legislator when you visit on Friday morning. The committees, is my understanding, they're still not totally set up because, as you know, all 130 some seats were up for grabs. And so committee chair have been pretty much appointed, but not all the committees are set. So it's for those of seasoned veterans that have attended before, it may look a little different this time when you're there. Before I turn it to Jim, I'm just going to ask this. I've sent out several emails. This will be the prime opportunity. You have an elevator speech. We're going to have a couple things in that elevator speech for you to say. It's going to be less than 5 minutes, since you probably have an audience. We want you to promote the CTE Resource Center recommendation for a budget increase. We've got a legislator that's writing that already to add to the amendments for the governor. We'll tell you more about that Thursday. But bring along some success stories. Be ready to tell these legislative aides what you're doing great with your students in your division. The success stories are what is going to be the most important, other than the few things we need you to promote. And at that, Jim, unless there's no questions, any more questions for me, Jim, turn it over to you.
Thank you, Darla. I'll welcome you and Brenda to jump in at any time when you have advice, as I share some resources. So I'm Jim Eggenreiter. This is a hobby for me. I worked on Capitol Hill back in the 1980s and 1990s until I decided to become an educator after I saw a project that I worked on for 2 years get traded off for a bridge, and decided I needed more meaning in my life, and sought out an education career. This is not part of my job now, but I do teach advocacy and stewardship courses at the graduate level in the College of Natural Resources at Virginia Tech. Otherwise, I'm a professor in the College of Engineering, where I work on STEM education and workforce development, which has been my area of expertise for a long time. So I put in the chat a link back at 3:32 p.m. that I might repost just in case anybody joined since then. And I'll bring it up on my screen. 'Screen. 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 ' Here we go. Okay, hopefully you see all that. This is a link that will become a regular part of our public policy page at the Virginia Association of Career and Technical Education website. There's been a lot that's updated since January 3rd, but the bills have not been updated. And I'm going to show you some tricks so that you can do a lot of this on your own. This, of course, is a link that takes you back to the Virginia Association of Career and Technical Education public policy page, where you can get access to our priorities, our messaging, all sorts of other resources. If one of your elected officials asks for your expertise in helping in any way, this is a good place to start. Of course, we'll help you as well if there's an opportunity to do that. The first thing I've got listed here is how to identify your elected official. And this is a video tutorial on how to do this, but you've probably seen this before. It's Who's My Legislator? It's accessible through the Virginia General Assembly, and you simply type in your address. And if I type in mine, you'll see it takes me to a nice map. You don't have to be specific about capitalization. And in most areas in Virginia, this is not a big deal. But if I click on the boundaries here, you can see that in my neighborhood, if you just walk 5 or 6 blocks from my house, you could be in a different boundary. So it's a useful tool here to find out who your representatives are. And it's more than just your state delegation. You can also find your national delegation as well. And here's a tutorial that describes in much greater detail for a good 4 or 5 minutes how to do that. And you are welcome to share that with others. For the House and the Senate, I have some links that you might find useful. One is to identify the contact information both locally and in Richmond for your elected officials, a list of upcoming hearings and committee meetings, the list of the committees themselves, and then something I want to spend some time on today, which is the bill status for all bills, and then a short list that we've sort of flagged specific to career and technical education, which I'll show you how I developed that list, because I imagine those of you who took the time to be on this call are probably earnest in your curiosity and willingness to be very functional as an individual representing CTE. But here's how I do it. I typically used to go to the Virginia Legislative Information System. I think Legiscan is better. Others may disagree, but ultimately I used it to develop this list of bills. And I think I can expand this and you'll still be able to see it on your screen. I have them enumerated in the typical fashion: House bills first, Senate bills second, but there's also House resolutions, Senate resolutions, and then some joint resolutions. One thing I've not populated is the patron. You can access that by clicking onto the bill number itself. Here's a short title. This is limited in the number of words. So I wouldn't rely on this exclusively for searching. So in other words, if you wanted to look for bills relevant to workforce development and you type Control F and typed in workforce, you might not find all workforce bills, and I'll show you how to do a better way to do that. But you can see that if you click on here, you can get more detail. If you click here, you can see the exact text. And if you click here, you can see discussions that others might have started, or you might be able to start it on your own. I have a column here for relevance that I've used to highlight some things that I think are important to educators, and specifically CTE educators. Daylight savings bills, you know, that influence how schools work and how buses work and all those other things that are important to all educators. But if you scroll down here, you'll see some things about graduation requirements, homeschool participation, which could influence our career and technical student organization participation, and even contradict the requirements of the national organizations, Virginia retirement systems, standards of learning, college admissions, school fundraising exemptions, which of course could influence some of the things that you do in your courses and programs and how you raise money, local sales tax for school projects, homeschooled student participation by another patron, fire drills, school board vacancies, etc., dual enrollment, junior ROTC as a physical education requirement. Wouldn't it be great if you were a CTE teacher and you got an additional physical education requirement for it? It does give you a sense that all things are possible through legislation if you find a patron willing to introduce it. I did want to show you how to generate these kinds of specific lists on your own. Oh, one thing I did forget to mention, you'll see that I made a short list right here. And if you click there, you'll just see the bills that I have flagged. Color coding indicates priority. No color, just the general interest to school personnel. Things that might be yellow are probably something that you would be more curious about because of relevance to CTE, and then something that's red is something that I think is going to become a priority for CTE. Now, the General Assembly page is very useful. You can go here and see individual members' information, including their staff contacts. You can get information about the specific upcoming section. You can see where to get video, where to watch videos of committee meetings. You can see whether you can watch some of these meetings live and how to access that. A wide variety of great tools here, and you can see it subdivided, senators, delegates, committees, and resources tabs across the top. You can actually go to the state code and see what the law currently says. If you click on the legislature, you can go to find specific bills. This actually has changed since I've been here last. And go to some tracking systems here. You can go to a specific bill, and I'm just going to pick anything here. And I did want to show you that there's a couple ways to look at this. Here's the summary, here's the full text, and you'll see it's listed as a PDF here. If you click on this, one of my favorite things to do is click on the highlight button. This will reveal any changes to the bill. You can see sometimes they're subtle here. I think that suggests that it was only some semicolons and a specific reference to the Virginia State Code that was changed on this particular bill. Often they're much more substantive than that. One thing I like about Legiscan instead, and to get here, actually all I did was this. Legiscan, they do this for every state, by the way, and then type Virginia. And then you can see trending Virginia legislation, all the bills from the regular session, and that's what I clicked on. Now, here's what you can do. You can come over here and type a word like school. You can type workforce. You can type funding, school funding, any combination of terms. You can put them in quotes to get specific phrases. And I like to type words like career, technical, workforce. Work-based learning is something that actually shows up in some of our bills, not that I found this year. Maybe some of you know differently. And you can search in the House, the Senate. You can limit it to things that have been introduced, things that have already been vetoed or did not, or may have failed in the one house or the other. You can go back in time if there's a bill that you remember from a previous year and wonder how it compares or who its patrons were. All of these are nice little tools for those of you who are curious and want to operate on your own. Now, uh, President Miller, or Executive Director Miller, has reminded me that not everybody wants that amount of detail. So we will be looking for bills that are worthy of being flagged, and we will continue to update this short list link so that if you only want to be focused on things that are relevant to CTE, you'll have that option, especially if you're operating from your phone. And of course, you can scan this and look at it on your phone right now on the screen. Dr. Long or Ms. Miller, anything you'd like me to highlight, or would you like to add anything?
Jim, if you would go back to the Virginia LIS page and go back to the page that's on when you come up to the Virginia General Assembly, or well, do bills and resolutions, I guess, but to show them how to put the bill numbers in to look for a bill if they're searching for a bill, like
Very good.
House Bill 281 or Senate bill, that it's all lower caps and so forth.
That's right. The folks who do live and breathe this every day do memorize those bill numbers. And you could just type HB 17 and it would bring that up. But just by entering that in the search window, I actually didn't. I should have tested this. I think it works with or without a space. No, interestingly, you should type it without a space, even though when you see the actual text, it will have a space. And there you can see the information that I shared with you before. You can see who it was introduced by here. You can also see all the people that have signed on to support it, which in this case isn't many yet. Thank you, Brenda.
Jim,
Yes.
if I could add, the reason we're not seeing a whole lot of bills and so forth is because they basically, since everybody's seat was up, they started over. So we're not going to, any bill from last year that died in committee wasn't a carryover. They had to actually come back and present a new bill. I do know, Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, there's been a bill submitted like it was last year for, was it STEM groups to be able to do grants, have grants to forward some of their programs to conferences. And we're still looking at a bill on standard and advanced diploma, and should CTE be included in that? Bill, and I'm all for lobbying, but I did put in the chat. No, they don't have to. You don't have to have a clear bag. All you gotta do is go through the metal detector. And I forgot to say to you all, before some of you get off of here, the reception, if you signed up for it on Thursday night, it will be heavy hors d'oeuvres between 7 and 8, so you may not want to have a whole big supper that night. See me if you didn't. We'll see if we still have enough room to go with food. But again, it's going to be a little different this year. And Dr. Long, you've done legislation, and Jim, you as well, longer than I have. Do you ever recall a time that all these seats were up, that when we got going at this time of year, the bills, well, most of the bills aren't going to be focused right now on education, except for general funding, because we are, as you know, we have a Republican governor, and the House and the Senate are Democratic, and so it's going to look a lot different than it has in past. About maybe some things will get done, maybe some things won't get done. I'm not sure how much education is a priority this year for our governor.
And also there is increasingly talk about a much larger budget shortfall for education in particular than anticipated. I I did not read about why those calculations were so far off, but uh, that may influence a lot of things. One other limiting factor this year is, in addition to it being a 60-day session, um, there's a 20 bill limit for senators. So senators are picking and choosing what they want to introduce, rather than entertaining all initiatives by all of their constituents. There is no
One
such limit on in the House yet. Sorry, Brenda.
That's all right. One of the things with what's different about the General Assembly is due to the realignment, is that because of the realignment, some senators or delegates were put in the same district as other colleagues. And so some chose either to move or to another district in order to run there, or some decided to retire. So you saw a mass retirement in both the House and the Senate. And I think that has impacted a lot, especially in terms of experience, with some of the very heavy committees, such as appropriations and education, that we follow. So with that, that's made this session look very, very different. And while I say that, one of the things, or a couple of the committees that we want to follow, is the House Education Committee and the Senate Education and Health Committee. These committees will be the ones that will address all the education bills. Anything that comes across that would impact CTE directly or even indirectly will go through those committees. It goes through a subcommittee on a K-12 committee before it goes to the full committee. The House Appropriations and Senate Finance and Appropriations are two other committees that we watch, because of course those deal with the money. That's the funding, that's where it comes from. So we always want to be mindful of that, especially with the budget. As Jim said, a shortfall in the budget, proposed tax increases, tax decreases. There's just so much there to take a look at, but all of that means revenue or less revenue for localities and cities that they may have for services, including education, or it could be a
I'll
bump
just
in
figure out a
revenue.
different way if I decide not to give them the whole.
So some of that we don't know right now how that's going to play out. So we definitely want to watch that. We'll also be looking within the budget, our current CTE funding that would be in this year's budget along with next year's budget, if everything is still in there for equipment, credentialing, STEM funding, all of those things that we look at and depend on for you to have within your program. So we'll continue to make sure those are within that budget. There was not any indication that there were cuts to those, but we want to be well aware that we monitor that. And we keep that in front of the General Assembly with the advocacy cards and the priority full white paper recommendations, that it's, we want to keep the funding in front of them at all times to let them know what the cost of funding our CTE programs are back in school divisions. And I'll do a little historical reference here that years ago, localities relied so much on federal, quote, Perkins funding, that we just kind of blew away the state funding because it was so little. And Darla, before these 25 years of now doing this conference in this format, and some of you weren't even born, but back in the 80s and early 90s, the total equipment budget was $700,000 to be divided and dispersed among 133 school divisions. Well, I was working in Tazewell County at the time, and my state equipment money was $7,000. Now, granted, that was over 25 years ago, but compare it now to 1.8 million in equipment that the association's been able to network with and to share with legislators the need. So I say that for the fact that we always have to keep funding in front of the legislators so that they know what opportunities we're providing for students, because that's where it comes down to is their success in high school and their success after high school, post-secondary, workforce, and being successful and all of that. So
Hey, a couple other tips I might throw in to reinforce the great wisdom shared by Dr. Long and Ms. Miller. Recognize that a big part of being there this week is just to get a feeling for the pulse of how it all works. The likelihood of you being successful in changing the direction of legislation is not very grand, but meeting people, especially meeting staff, making yourself available as a contact when an elected official needs some insight on something, maybe would like to visit a school, and even better, a lab, a CTE lab. That's a great opportunity for you and for ACTE when you can facilitate such things. Some cautions that we always encourage is to make sure that anytime something like that becomes a possibility, you talk with your building leaders about that so they're not surprised. If you do communicate with these folks, we strongly encourage you to use a private email address and not your school address. And then look forward to following up after this week with staff or your elected officials with more detailed information from our policy positions page. And if you have something specific that we can help you articulate and find resources to back up, let us know that, and we'll do that offline as well and get it out there. Odds are good that if you have something that advantages you and your CTE programs locally, they're going to be beneficial statewide, and we'd like to help you.
And one other thing I'll add, Jim, and I'm so glad you mentioned that about the emails and always running things by your immediate supervisors. Your business cards will probably have your school addresses on them. You do need to let your legislators know that you're there as a private citizen. And just either cross out or on the back of your business card, give them your personal email address and ask them to communicate with you through that. So that kind of takes all of those issues off the table as you hand them your business card. It has your name on it and contact information, but just ask them to use your personal email and write that on the back of the card, or either cross over your school email and write it in. I know that seems to be a little bothersome to do that, but it's just a way to protect you, that nothing comes back that says you were doing anything other than showcasing your CTE program and the success of your students and the success of what your students are doing. So that's exactly what that's all about.
Very good. And I also want to point out that Adrian Graham and Darla Miller are active in public policy at the U.S. regional level. So if you ever hear of initiatives elsewhere in the southeastern United States, please let them know and maybe collaborate with them on how it can be furthered in Virginia. And then, of course, if you learn anything that is happening in any other state, let us know about that, because no use reinventing the wheel if somebody's done the hard work to make it successful in a state legislature elsewhere.
Last thing I'll say, and then we'll open up for questions. It is a conference, business casual. And hopefully there's no snow in the forecast like some of the past years. You might flood out before you get there. But we're excited to see you in Richmond. Breakfast will be served. It's a buffet again Thursday morning, starting at 7 o'clock. And new folks, we'll have about a 30-minute workshop for you all to attend if you've never been before. And on that note, we'll open up for questions. We have a few minutes. People have questions.
I have a question while people are busy raising their hands. We started these Tuesday afternoon type of meetings during the legislative cycle in years past, especially when COVID struck and it was difficult to get people together physically. If there is interest in having some regular meetings during the legislative cycle, I think we'd very much like to do that. And interest can even mean 8 people, as far as I'm concerned. Eight smart people working together to forward a good idea can be very effective. But please let us know if that interests you. I think that's the kind of feedback that we're looking for to put such things together. And we'll welcome you to not only be an active participant as a presenter, speaker, we're even looking for hosts. But also, of course, opportunities for you to invite maybe a new elected official from your area who might enjoy hearing from career and technical educators.
And Jim, I will say that the legislators do enjoy doing Zoom calls. It's a little more convenient for them. You're more likely to get them involved and listen to 3 or 4 people at a time. So this is an excellent way to get them to listen for 30 minutes or so, or 40 minutes about CTE or what their concerns are, whatever. So this does work great with them. They do enjoy that.
And we'll be looking to recruit new members to the CTE caucus. If you get a sense that a new elected official is engaging in technical education and workforce development and durable workplace readiness skills and work-based learning, we're going to want to engage them directly. Shanti.
I have a quick question about the professional development sessions. Are they going to be like smaller breakout sessions, or like will all like 100 people that are registered be at every session?
For this conference, it might change next year because Bo Bundrick will be stepping into the role as president, and Dr. Eggenreiter has some thoughts, TED Talks. But yes, the breakout sessions, we have 5 of them that 5, and then we'll turn around and have another 5, and then 2 back to back on Friday morning. But Shantae, yes, they'll be smaller groups, the room set up for about 30. Okay, so it won't be for all. Only thing this will be in a group will be afternoon on Thursday. We'll do the public policy presentation, and then I've asked the CTSO state officers and that group to do a presentation because it was some comments from the survey from this past year. How to get it for the newer teachers that may not have come through that program themselves, how to get one of those, and how to get your students involved in career and technical student organizations. So does that answer your question?
Yes, ma'am.
Anyone else? That's good questions. Well,
thanks for making this happen, Darla. And of course,
now, Jim,
Brenda,
thank you for hosting. And we hope that all of you enjoyed this, and we'll continue to do it for another time. But again, looking forward to seeing everybody bright and early on Thursday morning, or if not, my hospitality suite on Wednesday afternoon or evening. With that, signing off.